You see, in our family, I said, how do I collect stories in our family? How do I collect stories of experiences in our family as your family gets bigger? And most people think of families as me, my parents, my grandparents, my children, my grandchildren. Very, very vertical. But the reality is, how do you expand that? Think of the wealth of knowledge that's in a horizontal family. What do you know about your brothers and sisters? What do you know about the experiences that they're having? Are they having experiences that can help you and give you wisdom in building and developing your family in any one of these 4 areas? But as brothers and sisters separate, all of a sudden their knowledge banks get completely separated. Their wisdom banks get completely separated. They're developing wisdom on their own. They're not bringing it together for the benefit of everybody else. And so these horizontal families miss out on the vertical concepts of being able to make things powerful, make things happen. So how do you capture these kinds of experiences as they happen? So I said, how do I capture stories? So years ago, we sat down and said, well, let's start out something simple. And so we took everything begins with traditions is the simplest way to create systems, by the way. The fastest and easy way to create systems is through traditions. So we developed this white tablecloth. And the white tablecloth, every year between Thanksgiving and New Year's, we have this celebration we call Thanksmas or Christgiving, depending on which member of the family that we're talking with. But anyway, so we traced our hands. So we trace our hands on this, and everybody that comes to our home, really, but mostly of our family, and then and we trace the hands, and we ask them to write down one story or things that they're grateful for that happened during the previous year. Just write it down. So they trace their hand, they put their name, they put the date, and they write down at least one or more stories of something that's happened during the last year. And all of a sudden, at the end of that time period, at the end of that period, I had all these stories collected on the top of this white tablecloth. And it was big enough that I could use it the next year. We found we can get 3 years out of these great big white tablecloths. And so now this last year we finished the 3rd year on our 3rd tablecloth. And I looked at this tablecloth, and I'm going there, and you're seeing some old girlfriends that our kids had, that put their name on there going, can't you just scratch that one off there? And you're seeing these different things. But I watch my dad, who's in his 80s, and he's very feeble, and I watch him tracing his hand. He looks so forward to this. And this last time, we were down there just a week after he got out of the hospital from a heart attack. And he writes, I am so grateful for doctors. And he writes it real slow. He says, I'm so grateful for doctors so that they can allow me to spend time with the people I love. And I thought, wow. And we knew the date. And we knew what happened, And then we see the little tiny kids with the tiny little hands, and they got them on there. And they write they're thankful they went to the zoo, or they went and wrote Disneyland on it and made a little mouse out of it, and they draw a little. They're like my mom. My mom's reached the point where she colors her fingernails and draws funny faces on it. So you kind of see this reversion from the little kids to my mom. But still, you just see them all over the place. But if I tried to collect these stories and see now if they can't make it to our house, they have a way we box it up and send it to them. Because it's become part of the culture. It's become a tradition. And so if you can develop that as part of the culture, tradition, now they're all of a sudden catching stories. What are your traditions? How do you name them? How do you name those experiences? How do you own those experiences? How do you develop them so that they'll outlive you? How do you bank them? How do you put them in the treasure box? And this is one of literally, I can share with you tons and tons that have come from other clients and other people and in our own family that we've worked with that develop systems around concepts, tools around concepts that are aligned with the principles of your family. That's all traditions are. Tools that are aligned to reinforce concepts based upon your principles that are then going to outlive you. That's the beauty of it. So can you bank in this? And yes, I can tell you how families where their kids have come up and said, can you loan us some money so we can develop a piece of property? This happened. A young family of ours said, can we loan us some money so we can develop this property? Well, have we ever developed property in this family before? No. But I know we can do it. Our neighbors have told us that if we bought this lot over here, we just divide it up, we could put about 40 or 50 homes on it, and we could make a ton of money. And you got plenty of money, so loan us the money. Well, they had the training, so they said, well, okay, first of all, we don't have any experience assets in our bank for this. We don't have any experience assets, so we're just saying no until you can prove to us that there's an experience asset. So they went out and found a relationship, somebody was willing to work with them, that was a developer, had tons of experience. So they did a pro forma, brought it together. They came back in, they said, okay, we think we got it figured out. All right, how's it going to benefit the family bank financially, the family treasury financially? They said, well, here's the pro forma. We couldn't get 50 homes like we thought, but we can get 34. And this is how much money we'd make, and this is how much. Okay, that's great. How's it going to benefit the core assets value of this family? How's it going to make it stronger? How's it going to increase that bank account within our treasury? What's that going to do for us? And the daughter in her wisdom said, you know, I've lived in the shadows of my parents because her parents were both very famous. They both had developed their own wealth separately. They were both first generation. The wife had developed hers in corporate. The husband had developed his in sales. And so they developed, a huge estate. And they said, you know, so we've always been in your shadows. This will give me a chance to develop something on my own, to develop my own self-esteem, my own confidence. And they said, well, that would be great. Would that raise the value of the bank if we had increased self-confidence, if we had increased self-esteem in here? Absolutely. Wow. What's that going to do for experience? Well, nobody's ever done this before. So we're going to do it, and we'll gather the information, and if anybody else in our family ever wants to do it, we'll have it all gathered together so they can do it. Terrific. What about contribution? How are you going to get back? And her husband, the son-in-law, says, and they're like 23, 24. He says, well, we'll pay taxes on it. And we said, that's not good enough. So Dad said, that's not good enough. You have to figure out how you're going to take choice and control over that asset. Remember, we've talked about that in our family meeting. We've talked about choice and control. How would you take choice and control over this? So with the guidance of their dad, guidance of their mom, they went out and started looking out. They found a nursing home that wasn't too far from their property. They went in and had a tour. They said, how can we help you? They said, we need new beds. We need these kind of things. And he said, well, if we were to give you $400 for every lot that we sell and we develop over here, would that help you? And they said, well, that'd be what, $12,000, $13,000, $14,000? That'd be amazing. Would you do that? Absolutely, we'll do that. So then they run back to mom and dad and say, look, okay, plus, right, when it works money, plus self-esteem, plus we're going to give it back to the bank, this knowledge, and plus, look what we're going to do for this shelter for battered women. I said, okay, here's the deal. We'll make you the loan. It's going to be very low interest rate, but because it's set up this way, and we got to benefit the family financially, for every lot you develop, we're going to charge you the lowest rate we can charge you, but you're also going to pay us a bonus for every lot you develop. Fair enough? And we'll be there with you and help you guys. Fair enough. Done. Did the deal. Between Christmas and New Year's, a year and a half later, I had the opportunity to sit with them in a retreat. See this daughter stand up, hand each member of the family a notebook that told you how to develop property, how to develop a real estate section. Had a DVD, or not DVD, but a CD, where she put all the documents and all the files and everything, so they'd all have the documents and files on it. Stand up in front of her dad and mom. I did not tell you they were divorced. This is the first time they'd sit back down together. And so they're sitting there in the audience as the daughter explains to them and her husband how to develop this real estate project and how they did it. And when they got done developing it, they then shared with them a check for their money that they'd earned on each lot. And then finally, they handed them a letter that came from the Shelter for Battered Women. And they handed that letter, said, thank you very much. And oh, by the way, we went out into the community and we were able to get pledges for what you agreed to do. And we actually made twice as much. And there was actually a newspaper article that somebody had picked up on it and written an article on it in the local newspaper. And they brought that article and showed it to mom and dad. How do you think mom and dad were going? They had to get new buttons for their shirts. You know, they were just busting. Tears were falling. They couldn't believe this was happening with their kids. They came around. What was the score here, by the way? Plus, 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 plus. They could have just given him the money like that. They could have just given him the money. And that's what so happens so much all the way. You know, I mean, your kids come to you and say, Dad, you know, I've been skateboarding an awful lot lately. I really think there's a new way to develop a skateboard. Can you give me about $75,000 to develop a skateboard and start a company? What would you say? You'd say, well, all right, wait a minute, son. Let's talk about this. You know, do you have a business plan? Do you have this kind of thing? And you'd run them through the ringer. You'd run them through the ringer, and you'd sit and you'd work with them like this, and if you decided to go ahead with it, you'd only do it if you went through the ringer and you walked through them and went through them like this. But all you got to do is die. All you got to do is die. I went through a family member's will, and I about threw up yesterday. It's 2 days. Yesterday. You know, he's developed this thing. I've been after him for a long time. He's been developing his own wealth, been going through things in his will just very well. If he dies, third. Done just like that. So his kid could have been begging him for $75,000 one day, and his dad's not going to give it to him because he's not prepared to receive it. And the next day, guess what? He's going to get about $7 million. And nobody has to ask him anything. Doesn't have to prove anything. Just gets it. So is the solution then to give it to him in stages? No. Is the solution then to give it to charity and not give it to him? No. The solution is, how how do you then develop leadership principles within your family, within the family treasury? How do you develop traditions? How do you develop systems that start selling and making all of this happen?